What's up, everybody? All right, we're on. I think. Am I on? Okay. I think we're on. All right, you guys, welcome to. This is Dave, the Simon Watchman, and it has been some time. I do apologize for not going live as much as I was supposed to, but yeah, I got a little bit of a presentation for you today. Today, I'm going to be covering Mandela effects. Again, it's been a long time since I covered it. And today I want to talk about airplane Mandela effects. So if you are into Mandela effects, you know that airplanes have been affected. And I've been it's funny that I haven't noticed until someone said it, and I looked at the planes and I said I should be able to pick up on this. I mean, I'm pretty familiar with airplanes. Um, I spent some time at the airport working in the cargo industry, working logistics, and I also have a background in designing airplanes, working on the C-17. In fact, I'm gonna cover some of that today. And so I don't know how to hide all these little icons that we have up in here, but I'm gonna try my best to get by with them. But welcome to my airplane Mandela effect presentation. If you see this little clip we have here in the center, this is the plane that I am most familiar with. This is the MD-11 made by Boeing here out in Long Beach, my hometown. Right there next to the Long Beach Airport on Wardlow and Cherry, there is the Boeing facility. It is now closed down, but in the late 90s, all throughout the 80s and 70s, it was McDonnell Douglas, and I got an apprenticeship there while I was in high school. And I did high school, I did college, and I did my apprenticeship, or learning how to be an aeronautics engineer to design and redesign airplanes, how to repair airplanes, and pretty much redesign parts that aren't working right. And so figuring out riveting patterns and trying to make things lighter. If there were any pieces or parts that were not compatible, they would send it to me. I worked for the checking department and the scanning department, the Spaceball program, and that was part of my educational background. So if I cover some of this stuff, do know that no, I was not a pilot. I know a lot of people will ask, were you a pilot? Because I do believe the earth is flat, and people somehow think that being a pilot will validate you to make observations. No, I was not a pilot. However, I did work for Boeing, and I did work for a lot of cargo, freight carriers, air cargo, for many years at the airport for multiple airlines. And the plane that I'm most familiar with is this one that you see on your screen right here, the Boeing MD-11. Actually, this one might be a DC-10, but very similar. I'll cover the difference between the two, the DC-10 and the MD-11. The DC-10 came first. Actually, this might be the DC-10. I need to see the back in order to tell. But yeah, brought to you by the Samoan Watchman. And remember, we are all watchmen, to look out for one another, to call out things that don't add up. And so today we are covering more Mandela effects, and today focusing on the engine placement, which is the part of the aircraft that is now affected. I'm also seeing other things too. The shell of the engine doesn't look right. There are some models where the tail doesn't look right. But we'll go through that. And so this is how engines are today. The gentleman right here is sitting on this part of the engine that is protruding so far ahead of the wing right here. And to me, this absolutely does not make sense. I gotta say, I've been on and around thousands of airplanes. I've been on hundreds of planes, but I've been around thousands of them. I've walked around with the pilots and the first officers and the engineers. Every time a plane lands and they have a 2 hour turnaround to unload and load and to get the load planning. I was part of the load planning. I was part of the fuel, not loading the fuel, but determining how much fuel goes into the plane. I was part of the crew who built the pallets to go onto these planes. MD-11s were mainly freighters. They were the number one cargo plane as far as pushing volume in the 90s and the 80s, and a big part of the 70s. They had to make several modifications because they were not perfect. In fact, they had a lot of crazy issues. They found themselves squatting, planes falling back because if you see, there is a third engine on the top, on that top wing. All right, and so underneath the rudder, and so that wing, that engine, the third engine, and the MD-11 is known for, and the DC-10 known for that third engine. There's a few other models that have a third engine right on the top, and that adds a whole lot of weight. And so the MD-11 had issues if you didn't load it correctly, meaning making sure you got a dummy pallet up in the front just to hold the plane down so you can load the rest of it, because you load in the door that's located in the above the forward hold. It's right behind the cockpit, and you slide the pallets back towards the tail. And if you put too much weight in the back, these planes will seat, which means they tip back, kind of like you're doing a wheelie. I should have got a photo of that. But yeah, this engine is not how it's supposed to look. I walked around plenty of airplanes, and we've checked around these engines and these shells. Usually it's a Rolls-Royce engine up in there, and the shells are really, really thin. This material right here is really thin. Aluminum and fiberglass and different kinds of materials, and it wasn't like steel or anything. Really light. But yeah, I mean, I know there's different airplanes now, and this is the knowledge I'm telling you from. I haven't thought about these things, I don't know, 15, 20 years now. But we would check these things to make sure that there was no compromising effects from people bumping into it. A lot of times when they land and you have all these people, 30, 40, 50 people working on an airplane at the same time with the pilots to load and unload. You know, people would bump into these things with their tugs and tractors and the AKEs, the containers that we use to load cargo. They would bump into these things, and that would fracture this thing, and then the plane would be seated. And this photo of my daughter looking at an American Airlines aircraft. This right here is protruding way too much ahead of what it should be. Sorry if there's anybody in the chat. I'm not able to see anything. I'm just looking at this presentation. But yeah, I threw that picture in there. That was us going to Hawaii a couple months ago. Here is a GIF. And this one kind of got some good placement. And we noticed that with this Mandela effect, the engines are supposed to be tucked in under the engine, and they started to move forward, and now they're way too ahead. Here are some aircrafts that I've worked on. 727, 737, 747. I'm very, very familiar with. I've been on that one multiple times. The number one plane I've been on, MD-11. Second would be 747. I worked on 757, 767. I've been on 777. I've only been on one. I remember it was American Airlines. And the DC-10, I've been on a couple, but I'm most familiar with the MD-11. I've been on the A340 and the A360. That was with China Eastern Airlines. Those are line flights. We did not put cargo in the top half. That's where it was a passenger flight. We would only handle cargo in the three holds in the bottom, forward, aft, and the bulk. The A380, I was there for the first A380 to land in LAX. I believe it was Singapore Airlines, or was it Qantas? I think it was Qantas. They brought in the first A380. I might be wrong on that one, but I remember I was there for the first one, and they had to land in remote because there was not a terminal built for the A380 double-decker planes at the time. AMD-80s I'm very familiar with. They called that, I'm not going to tell you about, there's a nickname for that plane. The C-17. I've not been on that plane, but I've worked on the design team. This is where I worked with Boeing. Again, I worked in the scanning department and checking department, working with engineers, building and rebuilding C-17 aircrafts, improving their design for the next contract with the Air Force. Did that again for my my apprenticeship with Boeing. Most familiar with the MD-11. That was with China Cargo, Wallace Air, Lufthansa Cargo, and Transmile Cargo. That was the last one I worked with. Worked with lots of different airlines, but as far as MD-11s, which I'm going to focus on today, I was on flight CK221 and CK222. 222 is the outgoing flight from LAX. This right here has been changed. This was also proof of flat Earth. CK221 coming in from Shanghai. It would go from smaller airports in LAX. In China. It would come from PEK, Dalian, Shenzhen, to the final airport, their big airport, which was Shanghai, PVG, and it would head to LAX, where I was at, the last leg. Weird thing about that flight, though, is that it would always go from Shanghai to Alaska to San Francisco and then down to LA. And it would make this route every day. It would never change. It would never change. It stayed on that route every day. Even if it had to pick up one piece of cargo, they would fly all the way up to Alaska and then go to San Francisco and then come to LAX. But looking on a flat Earth map, it's a straight line. And so that was proof. However, now I just looked up the flights of China Cargo, and they no longer go to Alaska, and they no longer go to San Francisco. They no longer go to the smaller airports in China. They only go from PVG to LAX, and that's it. Tail number was B2171. Also B120 and B2119. However, these numbers are no longer relevant. They now have changed it. Here's a KLM MD-11. You can tell it's an MD-11 because of the tail right here. Also, the elongated forward part of the airplane. This would be the forward hold, aft, bulk. That's where I worked, and all the freight. This is actually a line flight, but we would load the cargo from the cockpit all the way back to the tail. But yeah, you can tell the difference between MD-11 and the DC-10 three ways. We got the winglets, we got the square tail underneath the engine, and we have the long, I forgot what this is called, but the forward part of the plane. The DC-10 is about that, but they added length to add more weight onto the front part of the plane, because this engine right here brings the tail down, and then you got a plane stuck in that position. Here's KLM. This is the C-17. This is where part of the airplane. This is the Globemaster 3, the choice cargo plane for the military. Now, working on this plane, I actually do remember these arms here, these brackets that hold the engine, protruding forward from the wing. So I actually do remember that on this airplane. It's weird how that works. Now I see that, this protrusion of these engines, from the wing on every aircraft. Now, this is the number one choice for cargo carrier and military. I think now they got something else that's bigger. However, the C-17 does have a specialized design because it requires very little runway to carry a whole lot of cargo, and so they can get in and out, pretty easily. Okay, so this is the C-17 Globemaster 3, part of a legendary lineup. I forgot what the original. I think the Hercules was the Glowmaster 2. I might be wrong on that. And the Glowmaster 1 was way back in the day. But this is the Glowmaster 3 again. Still, there hasn't been any additions to that lineup. Still been Glowmaster 3. But again, I'm not in the military, so it might be different. Here are some of the specs on the MD11. Now you see, this is now changed. This engine has now been moved forward. Okay, and it looks very, very weird to me that this engine up here, it's doing this kind of a motion. It's like moved forward, and that doesn't make sense to me, because when these things are landed and when they're grounded, I work all along these airplanes. I'm walking around there with the flight officers, checking on everything. They walk around, make sure the gear, the landing gear is all set up, that all the tails, the flaps, everything moves, everything closes, everything's operational. So I'm very familiar with these planes. Now there are some residue here. Again, here's a top view. You can see, this thing is way too far. This front part of the engine should only be sticking out like this. Okay, so that's the Mandela effect with these planes. Okay, again, look at this thing. Okay, I forgot to get a screenshot of the dang training video of the jet blast. When you work at the airport, they put you through a jet blast training, because these engines will suck in air. All right, they'll suck in air through the engines, and then it shoots out, and they call it jet blast. All right, and in the video, you see a truck driving across the jet blast and gets blown out into a river. And the engines are underneath the wings. So if you see how much power comes out of these things, for the engine to end right here, all right, if this is the engine, you can see through the wing, that's dumb, because now you're compromising all of this, the body of the fuselage or the wing. Okay, so now you're damaging that just by operating that engine. Okay, so that doesn't, to me, being familiar with the kind of work that I did, that makes no sense to me. Okay, so I don't understand this new Mandela effect and how that now it's no longer an issue. It's very strange, very strange. There's another. This is World Cargo, Wallace. Again, you see how high these engines are, compared to the wing. The wing is not protected here, so this does not make sense. Okay, Boeing 747, the second most familiar plane I worked on. Okay, again, the MD-11, I've been on hundreds, and I've been around thousands of them. The 747 is the second most familiar aircraft for me. I worked with Lufthansa Air and also Wallace Air, working on cargo planes. Also KLM. I forgot KLM. And working with 747s. You see right here. This is very. This is like extreme. The engine is so far forward now. 747s were built originally to have this engine that kind of protruded forward, but not by much. Not by much. However, I remember working for Boeing, and while I was there, I got to see some plans for airplanes that are coming in the future. One was the Crane Mantis helicopter, which had these two propellers that were pretty crazy. It was supposed to be the most versatile helicopter ever to be flown by man, and they never came through with it. I've never seen it again, except for those photos and concepts. However, this is one that stood out in my mind, called the Pelican. Now, this plane is supposed to be a huge cargo carrier that's supposed to fly long routes over the ocean at low altitudes, and this thing is designed to hold a crazy amount of cargo, 500 feet wide And I remember this photo on the wall where I worked for Boeing. All right, and so, man, I wish I could see like a live chat. I don't know if anybody's here. Oh, well, there we go. Forever Love. Hey, what's up? Good to see you. But yeah, this poster I worked on. I mean, when I worked at Boeing, this poster was on the wall, showing the Pelican. Actually, I saw some other photos, concept photos of this thing. This is how big this is. This is a 747, as big as that is, and look at that compared to the Pelican. Okay, that's crazy. Well, it's over twice as wide as a 747. Now, I see that there's been some improvements on the design of the Pelican. However, I don't think they've ever made it. There's been some other planes that have come close, like the C5. But I remember seeing this poster, and I remember this top view, right, on the wall. Now, today, this photo, this 747 drawing is different. These engines are way too advanced here from the wing. Okay, this is how I remember those engines sticking out, but now they're way forward. Okay, so again, weird, very, very weird. All right, here's a 747 taking off, and its engines sticking forward. It always looked weird to me, this plane. It's one of the most widely used aircrafts in cargo and also in line flights. And it always looked weird to me because it had these 4 little engines on this big old body, But yeah, I hear a lot of plans for the 747. I worked on different ones: 747X, 747H. The one where this nose right here would open up and they would front load these airplanes, which was actually pretty cool. Again, I saw this picture in 2005, and the engines were not placed like how they are now. So I thought that was weird. So here's the MD-11. All right, top cargo of the 80s, my number one most familiar. Okay, I've been around this airplane for many, many years. Not a whole lot, but like 3-4 years. But imagine seeing this thing 10 times a day, being on it every day when you go to work. Okay, I've been on so many of these planes and worked on them and had to take information to to U.S. Customs. Okay, here's another one. Engines protruding forward. Okay, but I want to show you something that I caught. Here's another schematic of the MD-11 with the wrong engines here. This I would see in person many, many times, and it was always fun to see our airplanes taxiing up the taxiway. But yeah, here's a photo that I took. Yeah, we're all crazy, Jennifer. Here's a photo I took of a moving truck that was in front of me. Not a moving truck. Okay, let's see. What are they? I never even thought to look at what they are. Carriers, expedite. Okay, I guess they move cargo. And yeah, the engine placement seems right there. Okay, just barely coming out from under the engines, or under the wings, I'm sorry. Okay, that looks much like how they were supposed to look. This looks more like I couldn't tell you what model that would have been because the engines are too small, but the person who designed this had the right idea. I don't think that's an actual model. Call of Duty also has the right idea. Here's their version of the MD-11, except it's got the 3 engines. So it's kind of a mix of an MD-80 and the MD-11 with the engine in the center. It's got the square back tail, so it's showing that this may be the MD-11 in mine. Right next, this is a side view of it. Next to it, it's got the 747 wing. There's actually a 747 right here next to it. I played this map. This is the airport map on Call of Duty. But check out the engine placement. They got it right. This designer Whoever designed this game got it right. Here's that engine right here that we're looking at. Right here in this shot. Here's a front view. Okay, look at the shadow. He's got it right. Again, the 747's got the protruding engines, but that's because the 747 kind of always had. I think this is a 747X. It's got the front loading cargo bay that opens up. Here's another shot of that engine. Whether it's an MD-11 or a DC-10 or MD-80, it's got the right placement of the engine there. He's got it right. Here's a shot from, it was a YouTube video who screenshotted. They screenshotted, what was it, Family Guy. Engines in the right place. If you don't remember it like that, then you've been Mandela affected. This is how it's supposed to be. Safely placed. Okay? The bracket that holds it there is not struggling to hold the weight. If you look at it now, the engine is like this, and all that weight on that bracket doesn't make sense. As an engineer, you would look at that and you would not place your engine like that. This is totally safe. Not only is it safely hanging, but you got air coming in through here, jet blast coming through the back. The back of the wing is safe. Everything is safe. The body of the wing is safe. Now we got engines where the top half of the engine is even overshooting the wing. Okay, so this is how it's supposed to be. This is Family Guy. Let's see, Forever Love says nice, fine. Remember, it well, sat on seat 27, 29, nice. Yeah, that's how it's supposed to be. Here's a screenshot. I homeschool my children. Here's a screenshot from one of their assignments. This was last year. I was almost a month last year. Look at that. 425, 23. And it was, they were learning about lift and gravity and net force. Look at the placement on that engine. This is from my children's school assignments. That engine is placed correctly. That's how it's supposed to be. Here's the current MD-11. Look how far ahead that engine is placed. This is just silly. It's just silly to have all that weight on that bracket right there. These things are fragile, but it's still heavy. There's a specialized forklift that we need to get every time we do an engine swap with these Rolls-Royce engines. World Cargo, again, one of the companies I worked for. Now here's a screenshot that I took. This is a screenshot from the Canva app. It's a design app. You can design flyers, posters, videos, whatever. And I put in the word travel, and it brought up this picture. This is one of the pre-made photos. This is a model of an MD-11. Okay, you can tell because of the elongated nose, the third engine on top, and you got the square tail. Okay, if it was a DC-10, it'd be more round. Okay, it doesn't have the winglets, but that's because the winglets were added in 1990. So this is like a 1980s MD-11. All right, and I want to show you what I did with this photo here. So here's how the photo is supposed to be. And then I added, I traced it a little bit, cleaned it all up, and removed some of the background so we can see better. All right, and so now, if you take away the foreground, you look at that engine placement, that MD-11, this model of the MD-11 has not been Mandela affected. This model of the MD-11 has the correct engine placement. Again, I could tell that that's my MD-11 because of this square back. Because you got the third humongous Rolls Royce engine up there. And the elongated nose. This is a model of an MD-11. There's actually windows there, so you can't see because of the photo of this, the way that was designed, taken, like the filters or whatever they added to this model. But this was a model of an MD-11. I just thought that was pretty cool. That I pulled up that flight of this pre-installed photo on Canva, and that engine placement is the correct way that the MD-11, Boeing MD-11, is supposed to have been built. So yeah, it's weird. If you follow Mandela effect, you'll see that there's some things that are affected, and there's some things that have not. Parodies have not been affected, but the original show might be. For instance, Mr. Rogers in the Neighborhood and his entrance song has been changed, but the Eddie Murphy version, the spoof of that, when he did it on Saturday Night Live, now that one is correct. Hey, what's up, V? Oh yeah, I know you like airplane stuff. Yeah, I was just talking about how the world is flat. My experience with my airline experience, I was talking about how it kind of proves it by its flight routes, but that's a conversation for another day. Either way, and I think that was I didn't get to add any more of the photos to my presentation, but this is it. Let's see. What's up, everybody in the chat? Beersworth, welcome. But yeah, I just wanted to show that, just my thoughts on this whole engine placement. Again, I'm not just some guy who is just Googling these things. I've actually worked on this plane. And again, I've been on hundreds of them. Hundreds of these MD-11s. This is actually one of the ones I worked on. World Cargo, again, Wallace Air, KLM, Lufthansa, Transmile Airline, China Cargo Airlines, all MD-11s, all freighters. I was actually in charge of hazmat and loading. I would choose what goes on the airplane. I would have to pass everything that was hazmat. We sent dry ice, flammable liquids, explosives, radioactive material. We've sent animals. We've sent dead bodies. We've transported all kinds of things that are dangerous. And so you have to get certifications for that. I was DG certified to handle hazmats and to approve of them, to submit a report to every pilot in the cockpit. And so I had to get on these planes every day, sometimes 3 times a day, sometimes 5 times a day, and have to drive everything down to customs to verify everything and get everything approved for flight. And so it was pretty important what we did, in cargo, to make sure that these planes don't crash and nothing blows up in the plane because it wasn't packaged right. And so, I can tell you, if you've worked around things, all your life, it just comes second nature to you, And so when people say, like, oh, you're crazy, you don't know what these things are supposed to look like, you're wrong, engines are supposed to be protruding so far ahead of these wings, I don't know how you tell somebody like that. I don't know how you can tell me, who worked on these planes, and I'm looking at this airplane, and I'm like, that thing does not look right. That don't look right. That don't look right. I've been on hundreds of these planes. But, everybody's entitled to their opinion. And so, this is my thoughts on the placement of these engines and how they are Mandela affected, how this is incorrect. This airplane is incorrectly built. And I challenge you to keep an eye on it and watch how this engine placement is going to change back. That's just the way things work with these Mandela effects. Sometimes these things will change up, and sometimes they change back. I don't know what determines it. I don't know why it happens, but I've seen it happen with a few different things. And yeah, before anything changes or anything, again, I just wanted to share my thoughts on that as a person who was in charge of these airplanes. And so that's what I got for you today. Um, who knows? I'm off tonight. I might do a bass stream, do a little bass. It's always relaxing. I haven't had a day off in a long time. I've been taking care of business, like as I ought to, and so. But it's been fun. Anyways, I got some more content coming up about the mind probing and how that thing works. It's happening every day of my life. I don't know what's doing it and why is it happening, but that's what it is. Yep, definitely looks very odd. Forever love. Well, that's it for now. I'm gonna try to get some more content out before church. Of course, we got our church streaming on Sunday. And if you can follow us at the church, I will be on my channel, but it'll also be, I created another YouTube channel for it, just for church services. So I can try to keep that, separate from the other things that I talk about here. But I will be streaming on my channel still, just for everybody who does catch it here. But yeah, out of all the truth that we do cover, do know that the number one truth is that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior. And when it comes down to it, that is the only thing that really matters. You got to get that part right, because whether you believe engines are placed right or wrong, what matters is that you become saved. That's the truth. That's the real truth. And so continue to love each other, show love and respect. Also call out everything that doesn't make sense to you. And don't let them lie to you. There ain't nothing to fear out there. God's got your back. God bless you guys. You guys have a wonderful day. And thanks for watching.